Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm your host, Ace Clear, with my brother, Erik Falkenburger. I almost got it right?
Falkenburger. You were
Falkenburger.
close.
Got you. Erik's actually from Germany. What part of Germany?
The southern part of
The
Germany.
southern part?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stuttgart, if people know where that is.
Yeah, if you don't know where Germany is in Europe,
Yeah.
we're not attacking Germany, but they was known for a famous war. But anyway, long story short,
Sadly, yeah.
yeah. The United States was too, so no reason not to shame that game. But Erik is actually coming down here to tell us his story, and who he is, his testimony, and his experience in the culture exchange. We want to share with you all here on the Roundabout podcast. It's been a minute. Etah's third episode is going to be released here after Erik gets his episode out. This is Erik's last semester here in the United States at UNCP, the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. It's about halfway through the semester. It's like, middle October, kind of?
Yeah.
And he's graciously took the opportunity to share who he is, his life story again, and his testimony. So, Erik, just go ahead and get started, man. How is it here in America?
It takes some time to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I know some aspects of the American culture already, being half American, and then I speak the language, of course. But there are some cultural differences that I can't ignore, and
Yeah.
they're always present. But I feel like the longer I'm here, I'm kind of getting used to it.
Yeah, you're getting adapted.
Yeah, more and more, but it
Mm.
definitely takes some time, and there are some cultural shocking moments every now and then. But for the most part, I love to be here, and America is a great place.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. As American citizen, someone who's born, you as you said, you are half American already because of your mother, and you have that dual citizenship.
Yeah.
But you said you grew up most of your life in Germany. Is that correct?
Yeah, we just always spend our vacations in the US,
Oh, okay.
visiting
Yeah.
friends and family.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I always lived in
Germany was home.
Germany. Yeah.
Cool. I know. Earlier we talked about, the fact that we talked about sugars and sweets, and
Mhm.
how that's totally kind of different from the United States. Like in Germany, well, Europe in general, your sugars are like kind of low sugar.
Yeah.
You would say they was kind of bitter. You said,
Mhm.
um, and transferring that to the gospel. You're a Christian man and my brother in Christ, and so are the other listeners here. And for someone who doesn't know you, doesn't know what you look like, doesn't know, your skin tone, doesn't know what size shoes you wear or how tall you
Mhm.
are, you know, how is that transparent to the gospel? Like, I know we spoke earlier, like Germany is a declining Christianity country.
Mhm.
Um, when you came to America, did you ever see God in that culture exchange? Like, did you ever experience like Him differently in the United States, just as like you did the candy and the sodas?
Yeah. I feel like I experience him more over here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's more present sometimes. Of course, like in Germany, we have Christians as well, and some churches. But I just see how people treat each other sometimes, and it's just not necessarily Christian. And atheism is kind of increasing more and more among people, and so Christian values are decreasing. And here in the US, I feel like there's so many churches, so many different denominations, and people are more open to talk about their faith and to
Yeah.
talk about Jesus and to share the gospel. In Germany, I feel like people are more reluctant to it. Yeah,
And when you say it reluctant, can you explain that a little more deeper, like and
uh,
why and how?
um, yeah, like I feel like here people already kind of know the concept of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
They know who Jesus is, and in Germany, you kind of have to start at the beginning, explaining everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of people like doubt the Bible is true, and the stories in the Bible. And yeah, you kind of have to explain everything from creation to Jesus
Mm-hmm.
suffering at the crucifixion and dying for his sins and everything, and God kind of redeeming himself. Um, yeah, there's more explaining to do, and yeah, people are, as I said, not always open to it, and kind of resisting sometimes, when you talk about Christian stuff.
Yeah, yeah. That is something that I
Mm,
definitely would have never thought.
mm,
Um, I appreciate you telling me that because, it was growing up somewhere around a Christian community and someone, that's been instilled with the Christian values of, even if I didn't never have salvation or not, I knew about who Jesus was and,
mm,
the birth story and, you know, great dawn of time. In the beginning, God created heavens and the earth. That's something that Genesis 1:1 is instilled in my head since I was like able to basically have a conscience.
mhm,
But like to hear that a whole nother country that is, you know, that is kind of popular. It's not technically a third world country, and the values of Christianity, something like that. Like you haven't heard of the birth story or the beginning of time from the Bible. That's kind of a culture shock to me. You would think it like a third
mhm,
world country somewhere where they barely know how to read, but
mhm.
in Germany, some of those people never have an encounter or never hearing the word Jesus. Maybe that's kind of crazy. And I'm glad you said that too because in like living in the United States, I think we definitely got a little comfortable with our faith.
Mhm.
I know I have at moments, and I kind of am right now. I hate to say it out loud, but it becomes so routine. I know all the values. I know all the things about who he is. But do I know my relationship with him and how that develops in that discipline? You
A-
know,
And that is new to most people in Germany when you talk about your faith, that you can actually have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
yeah,
Like some people might admit there is some higher power, some higher entity, watching over us, looking down on us, and kind of being responsible for everything that happens, on this planet. Um, but like actually having a personal relationship, that is new to so many people
yeah,
back there.
yeah. And I got to a point too, man. Like as you were saying that, I got to a point where the relationship was so idolized that you know I put Jesus in a box. So he's my friend.
Mm.
He's not nobody else's, even though he is. I didn't want to share him to that point. It got so personal.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really overlooked when you say personal relationship. People say religion and not relationship over relation. People say relationship over religion, which I do understand. But if you really dig deeper on it, religion wasn't limiting God, but it was more so just saying that it's not saying that this religion is better than this religion or Christianity is in its own box, which it is obviously, but relationship over religion can get contradicting to a point, you know, where like, well, it's a personal relationship, and this is what Jesus told me, and he told you something different. If we
Hmm.
really put God in that box, you know, then then what he did for the whole entire world is contradicted.
Hmm.
When it comes to that relationship. Um, and going back to the religion part, I believe, from my studies and findings, um, that Christianity is a religion in a man-made term. It is. You can't deny it. You
Yeah.
can't say it doesn't exist as a faith or a worship or some sort. As atheists, atheism is a religion. They basically do not worship nothing,
Hmm.
which they worship the idea of nothing. That's what they stick to.
Yeah.
That's what they hold on to. Just like
Hmm.
Hinduism.
Hmm.
There are 400,000 gods in the Hindu
Hmm.
religion. And same thing with Buddha. The same thing with um, Judaism. Same thing with Muslims. Well, Islam. No, is
Islam. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's Christianity is a religion, even though it has a relationship, which is totally different from everything else.
Hmm.
But you know, with
And I feel like what you said, I agree with everything. But like what's kind of different for like Christianity, comparing it with the other religions, like Christianity is the only religion where God came down to us, made himself human, and because all the other religions, they're trying to somehow get to God,
Mm-hmm.
and in Christianity, God came to us. I think that's the
Yeah.
biggest difference that people sometimes forget about. And like, for example, in Islam, we have a ton of them in Germany, and I love them all. Some of my best friends are from Turkey, actually, and they have all these man-made rules and laws that they have to follow, like praying a certain amount of times every day,
Mm-hmm.
washing themselves, going to the mosque, going to Mecca on the pilgrimage, giving money to the poor, donating money. And even if they follow everything the Quran tells them to do,
Mm-hmm.
it is still not guaranteed for them to go to heaven.
Wow.
Like, yeah, that's just mind-boggling to me.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they do everything that they've been told, it's still not guaranteed. They might go to hell, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And with you saying that, that personal relationship with Jesus saying, I want you still with
Hmm.
everything you've already did, you know, you know, we can't abuse the word salvation like once saved, always saved, which is a very theological topic, which I'm not gonna get into, but um, you know, once we declare basically with our mouth, you can consider yourself saved. The ABCs, you know, when people say the ABCs are, some say it's valid, some say it's not. But if you throw to the terminology of admitting that Jesus Christ is Lord, if you say that loud, say it with your heart, just not your mouth. You
Hmm.
say it with your heart. Your heart is everything, basically, your soul, basically. And believing that, meaning having faith.
Hmm.
And, you know, confess that you are a sinner, because if you hold that down and be like, I'm still I'm perfect, I'm good, I don't need Jesus, then A and B doesn't matter.
Hmm.
But if you confess, you know, those sins, you know, that shows that vulnerability to God, which I'm not trying to get back to that because we're trying to get to know Erik at the end of the day. But, you know, with everything you said, you know, your buddies and your best friends and good friends, they have to do all these things in their religion, but they're not guaranteed eternal life. But yet they still do it. But then if you look at Christianity, we still got some people that, you know, claim the Christian faith, but they become so routine in a culture that Christianity has become a culture. It's like, well, he was Christian, and you know, I go to church every Sunday and I volunteer in church and go to church on Wednesday and volunteer, and you know, I read my Bible every now and then, and I know the 10 Commandments and who Jesus was, and it seems like it became a popularity thing, you know, and you know, when I seen some things the other day on the news which, you know, kind of mind boggled me. I'm like, this guy is promoting Christianity, but his household says otherwise. You know, and it bothered me.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and I don't, I'm not here to judge or anything, but like with Erik's lived a lot of life. How old are you now?
28.
28. Erik, you know, I'm 21. You know, 7 years difference, which is not to not extent crazy, but you know, you've been all over the world and you've seen it all.
Been to
Kinda, you know,
42 countries in my life.
42
Yeah.
countries. A guy that's visited 42 countries from Germany ended up in little old Pembroke. You know, what are the odds of that your testimony gets to be shared from Pembroke to the world? But yeah, you've already seen the world. So
Yeah.
now you're bringing the world to Pembroke and then back to the world.
Hmm.
You know, are we like that with our faith? Are we really, you know, disciplined enough to carry our faith to all 42 countries? Are we going to allow someone to change me? Like you've seen a lot, I'm sure. Even if you just travel to the airports,
Yeah.
every probably airport, you know, every airport has its own culture. And you know, I went to Atlanta over the summer, and basically, dude, I I seen some people that I seen from the movies. Basically, like I didn't know these people actually existed. The way they dressed, the way they talked, the way they looked, you know. And I'm like, the world is freaking huge. You know, I was looking on the screens, man. I was like Terminal B or something, Terminal C, and it said India, Pakistan, Germany, you
Mhm.
know, United Kingdom. I'm like, bro,
There's so much out there.
Yeah, yeah, there is, and we serve a great God, but how far are we going to allow God to be limited to a culture? And your faith, I'm sure, is strong. You've included, as a senior part of the soccer club. You got pied in the face today at Pembroke Day. You've invested into the community. Invested into the culture. Some countries you can't step out in public unless a certain time of the day, or unless a certain song plays.
And Christians are persecuted in a lot of countries as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I hate to say it, but sometimes we take a little for granted, and people say it all the time. But you can say it, but you really got to live it, man. And I'm speaking to myself too. That discipline becomes so slack because I get so caught up in everything. And, going back, you've seen 42 countries and yet ended up in Pembroke.
That to me is still crazy.
And this town has like 3,700 residents, excluding children. 3,700. Dude, you've probably walked through past 3,700 people in like an hour in an airport. You know what I'm saying? 3,700 individual lives. And the university serves over 8,000 students, online commuter and residents. It's a good sized university. It's not huge, but it's not like tiny.
Yeah.
It's not like private size.
It took some time to get used to.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed every moment so far.
Yeah, I think like going now transpiring and understanding who Erik is, and how his faith carried, and we're about to get to know you, and as we continue on to the podcast. With all that being said, like God is in every single life, some way, some form. And people may not acknowledge it, but the person who had an idea for this color floor that we're sitting, or standing on, whatever, someone had an idea that wasn't just there. I don't see no fish creating a certain type of coral reef. I mean, obviously they do, but we're humans and we're meant to do more, but yet we condition ourselves to the fact that God is only ours and He's limited, and this is how I know God. Yet each individual piece of equipment with this podcast set up, from the food we ate at Chick-fil-A, all those people who helped create that were humans, and God is in all their lives. It all circles back to the Father, and what He wants to do for our children. But being said, could you tell us a little bit about your life story? Like, so from Erik being, let's say, conscientious of his life, to Erik knowing that there's more life than Germany, and Erik, figuring out who God is, and I'm sure you grew up around it, and then Erik like saying, I have a bigger mission than just myself. There's 4 aspects. Could you just touch on those and how like you've grown to Erik today, the 28-year-old individual you are?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to summarize 28 years of life.
Yeah.
I'll try my best. So, I grew up in Germany, of course, and my mom is an American. And so I kind of always was in between two cultures, I feel like. And I always was open to the idea of traveling and seeing the world and exploring it, because I feel like there's just so much to see out there. And so like from a very young age on, we always traveled a lot. We always visited the family in the US and our friends. We traveled all across Europe, visiting various places. And so like from a very early age on, I saw like how life is like in other places, and how Christianity is being treated there, and how other people live out their faith. But when I was 20, I actually went on a mission trip to South America, and that kind of also changed my entire perspective on life
Yeah.
and my whole trajectory of life. Just seeing that people are satisfied with the very little that they have, and they just give thanks and praise to God for everything, for like getting in the car and getting back out again when they arrive somewhere safely. Things that we kind of take for granted. And they don't have much, but they're very satisfied with what they have. And yeah, so when I did that mission trip in 2018, quite some time ago, um, I realized that I want to travel more and see more of the world, and also tell people about Jesus while I'm at it. Um, and so, like, wherever I went, I kind of always seized the opportunity to be open about my faith and not just keep it to myself, because like God has done so much in my life, and I just want to
Yeah.
share it with the entire world
Yeah.
if I can. Even though I might not be the greatest speaker, I might not be as talented as other people. I still feel like I have a lot to share, and God has always like opened the door for me to yeah, be open about it, and yeah, tell people about my experience with Christ. And every now and then people come up and ask me questions, and I always thank God for it. Um, yeah, like I coming back to my testimony a little bit. I was raised in a Christian family,
Mm-hmm.
but I realized in school, like from a very young age on, there's not a lot of Christians around in Germany at all.
Mm-hmm.
As we kind of touched on this earlier a little bit. Um, and I never really had Christian friends growing up, until I was like 18,
Yeah.
19.
So you was basically like, uh, this is what I know,
Yeah.
and this is what you know.
Hmm.
So who's right? Kinda. Was that ever a thought? You know.
Sometimes, yeah. Um, and I feel like sometimes I came off the wrong way. Like people kind of misunderstood me
Mm-hmm.
when I was trying to like tell them the truth about God and the Bible and Jesus and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, like people have this very atheistic worldview where they kind of totally exclude God, like he's not part of it at all. And yeah, if you come with a different opinion than theirs, it's hard for them to accept sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, with that being said, and
Hmm.
I'm not trying to stop you, but do you think that also transpires to Christians? Like, if someone experienced God in a miraculous way, and someone who hasn't never experienced a miracle at all, do you think like the person who is a miracle life, had this testimony saying my leg was healed in a day, or my leg was healed overnight, and someone who has only known God for being a good guy, do you think when people bring up those miracles, and obviously miracles are still working today, they're common, we just don't see them as um, everyday life, which they do happen in everyday life.
Yeah.
So if someone came up to Eric and said, Eric, I was healed last night of a terminal cancer, the doctor told me this morning, and Eric's never experienced God in that way, do you think most Christians who have never experienced God that way would decline that?
I don't think so. I feel like most Christians would acknowledge the fact that God still can work wonders,
Mm-hmm.
even if they necessarily haven't experienced it for themselves.
Yeah.
Because like the Bible is full of stories that are sometimes hard to believe, like
Mm-hmm.
Moses parting the Red Sea, for example.
Yeah.
um like so much from a human logic perspective that it's just hard to understand and comprehend. But I yeah, like as for myself, I haven't really experienced miracles like that. I've heard stories, but I 100% believe them to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, God is still the same that he was in the past.
And all that being said, you know, God being the same as yesterday, going back to your testimony and your different friends and stuff like that. Um, how would you approach them today with everything you knew?
With everything I know now,
Just to give advice real quick to like someone who's listening maybe, and struggling with with the fact that God has chosen them to do this specific goal, but like I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to explain who God is to them.
Well, I always believe that you can pray about anything, and if you need wisdom to find the right words to say, just approach him in prayer, and like he can give you the right things to say in any situation that you might encounter in life. Um, yeah, like for myself,
And all that being said, Eric, you know, um, you say you was about to say how you would approach that person. How would you do it differently? So again, like how like say if Eric was a guy in the back of the school who was a bully, and then God turned him around and changed his whole life and trajectory, um, and you became passionate about the Father.
it's
How would you do
funny
that?
that you would mention that because I was actually a kind of a bully, like in middle school,
Uh huh.
first years of high school. Also, kind of, I had always had anger issues, and yeah, when I used to approach people after I got saved, it was always kind of aggressive a little bit. Not really giving them room to explain themselves. Yeah, it's just saying like I discovered the truth. You got to accept it. I'm trying to help you here, man. Just work with me, and I feel like that kind of like threw people off a little. And now I would lo- uh, approach them in a more loving and supportive and gentle and meek and patient kind of way. Um, like when I see someone who's having a bad day and like they don't feel good at all, just like sharing my experience, what I've been through, how God kind of healed me of depression. I feel like there's a lot to be learned
Yeah.
in our previous life, everything that we already accomplished with Christ, how He
Yeah.
has helped us through some bad times in life, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's the strongest testimony that we have as Christians. Of course, like also pointing to the Bible, what God has done there, but also what He has done in our own personal lives. Just
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
with all that being said, you really hit me on the noggin on the fact that you know God can use our past life for the benefit of the now life. Um, most people try to get rid of them, like that's no longer me. Yes, it's no longer you, but God was still in the midst of that.
mhm.
Think about all the times where you might have felt bad. It was like, there's no reason I need to feel bad. I was doing this and that right. Or all the fact that um, Asa or Eric was playing around and started bullying a girl, this little girl or this female, and we felt bad after, but then joked about it. Like then we went home and thought about it again, and we was like, should we really do that? And then the next day we forget about it. And I think there's lessons in that. Like all the bad things that you do, no matter how many times it is, there's always a lesson in it.
Mhm.
Um,
And I feel like I learned the most in like the lowest, darkest moments of my
yeah,
life. When I've been through storms, when I've been through the desert, when everything didn't really make sense. That's when I kind of was the closest to God, and like He really showed His true power, like getting me out of it again, and like getting me on the right path again, and yeah, pulling me out of like the misery I was in. And yeah, like um when we're doing good in life, I feel like we often don't really give thanks to Him or praise Him enough, like as we should. But if we're like not doing good at all, like then that's when we cry out to the Lord, and then yeah, He's always there for us, and He always finds a way to get us out of whatever we're going through. Um,
yeah, and I definitely agree with that, man. And
Mm.
uh, some people, I believe, it's called the roundabout for a reason. I'm just going everywhere with it. But like, if we really thought about it, and all the individual life we had, we're still gonna have mess ups. Um, I was thinking about the other day. It's like I had, I'm being very vulnerable at this point. I had $3.67 in my bank account. And this summer I had thousands. So I was working my butt off. But, when I had all that money, I mean, I was more focused on just getting it. It did put me in a point, and every summer I've served somewhere in ministry. Besides 2023, ever since high school, I've served somewhere in ministry for a couple weeks or to the whole summer. And this year was the first summer I didn't in like 5 or 6 years, and it really pushed me to a point that I might have been running away from the fact that God was still trying to use me, and I was just really trying to grow up. And when I say grow up, that I had been conditioned to the fact that I need to work my butt off in order to survive. But like if I reflected on it, like God provided me every single thing I needed when I was serving Him. If it wasn't financially, it was spiritually, mentally, physically. Even though sometimes I was stripped I was stripped so raw. When I say raw, like to the bare meat, I was still satisfied. It wasn't like I was not satisfied, even though I may have been like a little overstimulated 24/7, or I was always working and physically tired, mentally tired. I had everything I needed to survive. But this summer, I had the money, but like spiritually and physically, mentally, I wasn't peak. I'm 21 years old, and I guess you could say my frontal lobe is still developing in some sense, according to science. But I have to remember that I'm still a child of God. We're all children.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're going to make mistakes. And we need to surround ourselves with like-minded individuals. Like, we were supposed to do the podcast this summer, but, other plans came up, which it all worked out. We're here now.
Mm-hmm.
But it brung me and you back together to this very moment, because we both have life to live. And maybe God wanted for that life to happen first before this happened,
Yeah.
And I don't know. He probably might wanted it to happen then.
Mm-hmm.
But God could still use any of that, any of our sicknesses or turmoils or health issues.
There's one thing I learned is that God always makes something happen for a reason. And He doesn't waste time at all. Like everything that happens, as you said, like brought us one step closer to Him. Even
Mm-hmm.
like the bad stuff that happened.
In a shortcome, and you said He doesn't waste time. And sometimes we get to a point that it's so long that the waiting becomes hurt. We think it's punishment. But yet, what can we do in the waiting when it comes to serving? Maybe like it's 2 years you're looking for that dream job. Erik's looking for that financial stability. But in those 2 years, without you worrying, you could be still serving Him. Something that I'm trying to learn is that when I'm serving Him, I'm still going to be fed, sheltered, and clothed.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what. Somebody's always looking out. God's people's going to look out for God's people.
Yeah.
When it comes to His ministry and when I say ministry, like God's kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. If we go to Him every day and serve Him, worship Him, yet bring the gospel to the generations in the next generation and the next generation, there's nothing bad that could ever necessarily take us out of that. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, anything could happen, but when it comes to that sense of serving, if we truly think about it, everything's going to be provided for the serving. Everything. Mm-hmm. You may not like it. You may have bad experiences, but when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, you're going to have it. God's going to make sure you're taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm trying to definitely lean on to, because I get so busy, dude. Like, I'm everywhere on campus. Like, I'm everywhere. This time last year, each semester is totally different, dude. It's its own chapter. And it's literally astounding to say that. Like this time last year, I was a supervisor, student intern for Sodexo. That company's no longer there. Sodexo left in summer, and I think he got there in the spring, right?
Yeah.
They was there in the beginning. Their contract hadn't ended yet, but you can tell that towards the end of the semester, the food got whacked like bad.
I could tell.
Yeah. And I kind of didn't like that, but anyway, last year I have became such um a dog, I guess, a working dog, that like sometimes, dude, I would skip class to go work for them. Because not necessarily they needed it, because I felt like I had to. Because I had been conditioned to the fact that they couldn't do it without me, you know. And I never, I'm not speaking bad on the company or anyone who works for the company or whatever, but I was told I was going to get paid $17 plus an hour when I became a supervisor, student supervisor. I started as an intern May 13th. I never decided the drawing line because I had put myself in a predicament. It was like, it's going to work out. And sometimes it's okay to do that, but I knew it wasn't at the end of the day. Like I had begged and begged for my money. I probably lost probably close to $1,500 in paychecks. And that's a lot for a student.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A student, for someone, and I worked a lot of hours, dude. Like there's 2 days in a row where I worked 36 hours. 36 hours in 2 days.
Mm.
That's 48 hours in a day. That's 8 hours of sleep. Like what? No, that shouldn't be normal. And I let myself do that. Not because God told me to, but I had told myself I needed to. And what was I getting out of it? The job's going to get done either way. Their bills are going to still get paid at Sodexo. But I felt like I had such a good heart that it got abused, and people didn't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And I left in December. I said, if you can't work with me, and I had towards the end of that attorney, I just stopped working. I told him I'm not coming back unless I got my money. But I had served so much to a company that I stopped serving God.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was using the fulfillment that God had gave me when it come to my servant heart and giving it to someone I thought I was helping. But at the end of the day, I may have touched a couple lives of my compassion and, the bringing the gospel to them in a certain way. But that at the end of the day, like, no fruit was bared in that situation. And, there's situations like that all the time. But, Eric, this episode's about you, but it just the thing that God doesn't waste time. That really hit me. And,
especially as you said, like when we're waiting for something, especially like in the crushing and the pressing, like when
that's how olive oil was made.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's crazy you say that, because I was crushed and pressed, and maybe God allowed me rather. I wouldn't say wanted, because I don't think God wants anything negative ever to happen to you, at all. Because what kind of father wants that? And He didn't need you to. He didn't want you to, but He can allow it, and the reason He can allow it because it points you back to Him. And ever since being saved, when I was a camper at a Camp Grace in Fairmont, North Carolina, I've been like, every time I messed up, it all leads back to God. There could be days, man. There was days when I started my freshman year, like, it wasn't that I was partying, but like my mind had got so distracted, dude, that there would be some days where I wouldn't even think about God. And that's hard to say now, because God's everything. I used to look in the mirror and be like, what is a human? Where's his conscience? Why don't I have a conscience? Why don't I have to live this life?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
there's so much evidence that points to Christ.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, my whole life is to fulfill Him, and He's pleased by it. He wants what's best for you. He wants a family. We're totally different from the angels. We're not angels.
I feel like, even if we don't feel like we're accomplishing anything for the kingdom of God, if we're just caught up in the busyness of life, and we just get so distracted and everything.
We created our own. We created that too.
Yeah, I feel like we might not be aware of it, but like some people might see things differently than we do, and they might see whatever we do, that somehow in some way it points to Christ, even if we don't feel like it necessarily does. I hope I'm getting my message
Yeah. You
clear.
are.
Yeah.
And everything points back to Christ is definitely a big thing in my life because, dude, I'm really stretched thin this semester. Like, I have 17 credits. President of the Native American Student Organization. I'm not trying, I am. And the executive board and the other people, the members, it's growing tremendously. We got like I think 40 members on the roster, and like at least 75% are involved in some form, some fashion, like consistently. Obviously, there's members that are, in there, like, they're at all the events, but you know, I've been like, I was in a meeting the other day for the University of North Carolina Pembroke Mass Communication Club, which is also known as Brave Media. It's a potential in the works organization that the mass communication department is trying to bring, and they want me to be the president because they know I can get it done. I took it, because why not? But with all that serving, it gets to a point where, like, I know I'm not going to have this next year, but it gets to a point where, like, I'm serving all these individuals, trying to get not trying to get a thrill out of it, but my purpose is towards the Father in reality. It needs to be. And it's kind of taking me away from that, but I'm trying to find that balance still, and also being involved in fraternity. Also being advising and retention specialist, finding research, working a campaign for a university and a town to coexist with each other.
But I still feel like you mentioned that you're serving people instead of serving God, but by being kind and the person that you are, reflecting Christ's character, because obviously you've been walking with him for a couple of years. I feel like that also can point to Christ, just by the way you're treating people, and I feel like you're being a little bit too hard on yourself, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Because
I mean, I need constructive criticism wherever I can. Because I can't do it alone.
You never know how other people might see it.
Yeah,
and I'm sure Jesus can use your busyness and you serving other people to bring other people closer to Him. God's ways are sometimes hard to understand for us.
Who you telling, bro?
Exactly.
That's crazy you say that, because I am very hard on myself. I'm like, I really do all this, but like, am I doing enough? Am I serving enough? And I think that's one of my downfalls as a human. But it's also a blessing because it keeps me on my toes. But like, I have to learn how to control it. Not even control it, like not even let it control me. My thoughts, my anxieties, and going back to your testimony, you grew up in a country where Christianity is not common. You grew up in a household where it is. 42 countries all across the world. The northern, southern hemisphere, western and eastern hemisphere. Some people will never go out of the United States. The country's only technically 250 years old. Well, a little older than that, I think. Technically, according to Declaration of Independence.
It's crazy. I have houses in my tiny village in the middle of nowhere that are older than your country. That's just hard to wrap your mind around that a little.
Wow. Whoa. That is insane. 250-year-old plus homes. And and we got older homes here. It doesn't compare nowhere near that. We obviously got artifacts, and they being a Native American man, being involved in my culture and stuff, I've seen some old artifacts, but there's nothing like having a 250 plus year old home or, standing home in general. Like that's not common. It's unheard of. You can't. And the reason you can't is obviously because, well, there's the 1600, 1700, like you go towards Jamestown's in Virginia, very historic place.
Yeah.
Very historic. Like across the whole nation, some of the land didn't get touched for like 100 years. With with the colonizers, pilgrims and stuff, and settlers, whatever you want to call them. But like to hear that, and God was in all that too. Like our country is technically not superiority, but like the United States is looked at as not a superpower, but a place of hope, I guess you can say, to certain people.
And also kind of a role model for Christianity.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that, because I believe we are too hard on ourselves too, because we always like to try and call each other out. And some people, do the correct way and try to lead them the correct way, but the consistency of it is really hard. The consistency of accountability and discipline is something I struggle with. I recently got put on Adderall for my ADHD because it had got that bad. Like, some of my grades right now reflect that. I'll be okay by the end of the semester, God willing, because I I'm gonna work it out. Well, I'm not, we're gonna work, me and God. I'm putting my effort in, and God's gonna do His thing. But I got so caught up in my mind saying I wasn't doing enough, and I wasn't doing too much. But there were days, dude, like I would be so hard on myself mentally. Like my physical body would get affected. Like I'll feel depressed, and my body would get felt like jet lag. I didn't know relevance to time. So there was moments, dude. There was like a couple, like 2 weeks right before I got really sick, about 2.5 weeks ago, and like I was kind of like I was in my bedroom right across the hallway, and I couldn't barely move, not because of the fact my body was physically sick, but I was mentally and physically sick at the same time, and my body couldn't heal itself because my immune system could not function. It could not help me. Like I got these antibiotic and steroid shots that didn't do anything for days. And usually, I don't know if I don't know if you ever had a shot in America or whatever, but when it comes to medicine, the shots are the fastest way. Obviously the IV are the fastest way for medicine to get to your body, the most effective.
Yeah.
My body didn't get better, and that was the first time ever, and I was like, there's definitely something wrong. For my body to continue. I got the B12 shot and a Toradol shot, which is B12's energy, so dehydrated. And I got the Toradol, which is a pain medicine. And also with some antibiotics a couple days later. And I felt okay, probably like 18 hours. But then my body shut down again. I was like, no way. Because I never got better and then got worse. Like, that's not... you will hear about like ICU. Like, you know what ICU is? Intensive care unit in a hospital is where those people who are practically dying go and try to get better.
We just call it differently, but yeah.
Yeah. and dude, I was like, nah, there's something happening. It put me in predicament in my mind. Like, I really got a lot of stuff I got to deal with. I need to deal with, rather. And I know, once again, the episode's about Erik and his life, but you're helping me pull out some things that I think that we can both share to each other. Our mind can become so powerful, a powerful entity. It affects everything. It becomes control. And
yeah, it really gets bad when we start listening to our mind instead of God.
Yeah. And there's a verse, man. It says, "Do not lean to thy own understanding."
Yes.
And that hit me as hard as a freight train. Like one day out of nowhere last week, I was like, "Whoa, where did that come from?" I haven't heard that verse in like probably a couple years. And I used to say that to so many people. Like, people come to me all the time for prayer requests, and like for advice and to hang out and stuff and talk about some things. And I'm like, I've been preaching to myself for years and never used it. You know, I got so caught up in like the condition of my mind and that I was looking for answers from people who were medically advised, or I was looking for answers in places where obviously I wouldn't find answers, but I was desperate. And when you're desperate and not leaning towards God, you'll find the devil's playground.
Mm-hmm.
When you're desperate, with all that being said too, and still, Eric, um, going back to your life, how would you say your mind's definitely adapted over time after experiencing 42 different countries, and yet trying to still hold on to that faith and make sure that faith is still instilled in you through all these culture shocks and differential lives, and from the mission trips you've taken, and going back home every so often. How do you as an individual hold on to your faith in all those times where your mind may want to win?
Yeah, it definitely happens almost every day. There's like always a spiritual warfare going on inside of me. Um, yeah, like reading the Bible always helps. Having good Christians around you that you can talk to about everything and be totally open and vulnerable and just tell them what's like going on in your life, and they always seem to have the answer, or like they have a totally different perspective on your issue than you do. Um, yeah, like you mentioned my travels. I've seen a lot of pain and suffering, and I've seen how it
Mm-hmm.
is in other places. And most of the time, those are places where Christianity is just not as strong. I've been to a lot of Muslim countries. I've been
Yeah.
to some African countries, and yeah, I've seen like what the lack of God does in society.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's definitely a big thing. Yeah.
yeah, and then I still like Germany's history is crazy if you think about it, because after World War II, like first of all, World War II, we did a lot of terrible things,
Yeah.
a lot of crimes, atrocities, the Holocaust, just to mention a few, but there's been way more. And after the war, after we were defeated, thankfully, um, we were kind of like we hit rock bottom. Like the country was in ruins, and yeah, there was just no future really for the people. A lot of hope was lost, and 10 years after that, the economy was booming again, and there was suddenly a lot of hope, and things started to go smoothly again. And yeah, sometimes, and now we'll have like the fourth strongest economy in the world, and like a lot of people are coming to Germany because there's so many job opportunities, and you can live a good and peaceful life there. Um, just like hitting rock bottom and then like getting up again. Um, I feel like that a lot of that is thanks to the grace of God. I just give you a quick history lesson right there because I'm gonna be a history teacher someday. Um, I feel like sometimes us as German people, um, we didn't fully deserve what happened to us. Like we're doing so good right now, but we did all these terrible things in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like yeah, God has just been too good to us.
Hasn't he all though?
Yeah,
He's did everyone like that.
yeah,
Like America's did some crazy things too. I'm sure you know about a little bit of history, but like as a Native American man, you know, Christopher Columbus Day is to a Native American indigenous man in a community that you live in, in Pembroke. Christopher Columbus's Day is technically a slap in the face from the government. You know, um, obviously the story with Pocahontas is not factual.
hmm
Um, she was picked up and brutally raped, and used for certain things, and it's not because that um the settlers were necessary mean, but once you get that power of authority and that sense of like you can have control, you're going to take it, obviously, right? The culture itself in the Native American communities are very family oriented. They're very tight knit. Communication is key.
I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for our government, you know, they're kind of still pushing a lot of different agendas towards a people that barely is surviving. You know, United States is huge, but there's not a lot of East Coast natives no more. Um, and that's not because of the fact that we're killing ourselves, which we kind of are. Our bodies, you know. So, do you have a tradition at home like only Germans do? Like when it comes to food, do you have a certain food you guys only eat? Like you only see Germans do it, or certain type of way?
Like
Yeah.
no one else knows about it.
Yeah. So that's the same thing with like Native American people. Um, you know, we grew up on our foods. We grew our foods. We traded, just like any other culture, but our health and medicines that we had were lost in like um, segregation and colonization and the things that we used, which is trying to, you know, there's actually some elders in the community right now that are known to be trying to give that back and that knowledge back to the community. And that being said, after all that and all the hurt and stuff, God has still blessed this country and those communities that were slaughtered and destroyed, you know, to a fact that we can still live comfortably. We can still thrive in our own culture, you know, and even though some of us are lost, and you know some generations were lost forever. You know, you know about Trail of Tears, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so like there's bodies across that whole entire map. You can look up a map right now, and you can look at the trails where each tribe was going back to Oklahoma, where they was displaced, and I promise you, you'll find bodies on those roads in the woods somewhere, you know. And it's not because of the fact that it was normal or it was routine for a native person to die, but you know, they just wanted what they want. They wanted what they wanted, and so they did what they did. So humans are naturally going to take over what they want if they are higher power. You touched on. I mean, it's history now, but Germany was known to slaughter Jews because they believe. You know, according to my history, you know, my history class rather, not my history. Hitler was anti-Jewish because he believed
the Germans were superior.
Yeah, and you know, millions and millions and millions and millions of people were killed during that time. Innocent lives suffered. You know, it happens everywhere. It does. And it's kind of sad to see. You know, just like with Israel and Gaza. Some people support Israel. Some people say it's the Holy Land, it's the chosen land. It's supposed to happen. I promise you, no God we serve is support a massacre of a people.
No.
Not with ill intent, you know, because they choose this way. That ain't Sodom and Gomorrah, bro.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not living a life of sin. They're living a life of innocence because they don't know. But yet, how are you going to bring God to a child who's experienced death of both of their parents, their home destroyed, and they've seen the missile come and blow up their neighbor's house? How are you going to bring God to that when they've been told God's chosen people, which I mean, I don't know how that is still relevant because the Jews and the Gentiles were brought together. You know, the Gentiles with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from the Pharisees and the Babylonians and everyone else was brought
and
as
a lot of
neutral.
Jews kind of left the promised land and scattered all around the world.
Yeah, and I mean, how are you going to tell a child that their creator people which is technically, you know, technically the sisters and brothers. You know, we're all sisters and brothers and under eternal law. You know, at the end of the day, we should be there for each other. You should be welcome to my home, just like you are now. Anywhere I go, if the guy on the street needs help, you know, and I you know, have that spirit discernment. If he needs something, and God, you know, I can feel, you know, God allowing me to do that, I'm gonna help him. You know, it's not because like I shouldn't. He's because he's homeless. Like I had an idea come across today, man. That's why it's called the Roundabout. You see where I'm going? I'm just going everywhere. I had an idea come across today, man. I was like, there's no homeless shelter in Pembroke. There isn't. There's rehabilitation recovery centers, but there's no shelter for you know, consistent help. I was like, there's probably so many scattered throughout the edge of town and like certain places and woods and stuff, which there is, and I know a couple places, but where's the people that God created to help each other, help the land? You know, I mean, people get mad. You know, there's certain people that only get mad at weeds in the garden, but yet won't choose to pull the weeds out in their home, meaning the insecurities, the sinful ways, all the things that bring you drought.
It's the same. What's that Bible verse? Like you see the speck in your brother's eye, but you don't see the
Yeah,
in your own eye.
I do see what you're saying.
Yeah, that Bible verse kind of comes to mind. Yeah, we always like point at other people and see like their own wrongdoings, but we ourselves fall short in so many ways. Fall short to glorify God in our daily life.
Yeah, and you know, going back to the innocents and the people who do not know God, like you literally said, there's people out there that have never heard who God is in a first world country where life is good, where life is like, you know, is it good? Would you say so?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and there's a community right now that's like, well, the gospel spread everywhere. No, it hasn't. There's places in such a public eye where God hasn't even touched the surface level of their heart. And that's not because of God's fault. That's because we haven't completed our job yet.
They discover new tribes somewhere in the jungle almost every day, and they've never heard the gospel. In my country, it's a bit different because like most people heard about it, they just choose not to believe in it. It has a lot to do with wealth and materialism. As long as people are doing great, they're not gonna
worry about anything. Like they won't worry.
Exactly. Yeah. Like as long as they got everything they need, there's no need to believe in God. As long as they're doing great. Yeah, but as soon as tragedy strikes, that's
where are you, God? Like people
Yeah.
say all the time, Jesus Christ, or God forbid, or like God DAMN. Like you're acknowledging the fact that there's a higher power that you can call on. Like it has become slang, but like when people say Jesus Christ, that means like that's unexpected. Basically, that means something of higher power and not between one party and another. That means something in the middle, something greater has interfered. From my perspective, you know, like when you stub your toe, you didn't mean to stub your toe. The chair didn't mean to hit your toe. You know, and you're like, well, somebody's got to be the blame the fault, so it might as well be Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, and some people may disagree or agree. I mean, it's just opinion. I don't. There's no continental fact check on that. You know, I'm only human. But with Erik saying all that and saying like, there's tribes being discovered every day in the jungles. Like, those people are still living with axe and spears. You know, or They're still living off the water, butt naked. And the only thing they know is what they know, what their mom or dad told them, or their grandfather, or a chief of the tribe told them, the head leader. That's all they know. And until we truly bring the gospel, which is the truth, but also the one that attracts, people want to hear something that's going to get their attention. And a God that is aggressive and that should only be feared is not a God nobody wants.
Mm-hmm. And we, as his representatives, like bringing them the gospel, we have to lead by example as well, and showing love and compassion, everything Jesus stood for. If a missionary is aggressive, people are not going to believe in the gospel.
Yeah, like this the old dude just came out of nowhere and said, "You must believe in God," in their their native tongue or something, like their tribal language. You must believe in God, or you will die and go to hell. That's not the gospel at all. Jesus never came across like that. He never once preached that you were going to hell if you don't believe in me.
But sometimes, like even nowadays, you hear evangelists say that.
Like evangelism literally brings the goodness of the gospel, not the truth. Like there's different ways, like from the apostleship, from evangelism, pastor, to bishop, and there's another one. There's like one of the 5 titles in, like, when it comes to leadership and ministries in the church. Like how are you going to bring a gentle gospel when you're called to bring it in a gentle way? When I say, Eric, what I'm teaching you is 100% true, but yet, if you do not turn from your wicked ways, you will die and never see God. First of all, if I see no benefit of turning from my ways, why would I do it? Second of all, why am I sinful? Third of all, why should I even turn to a God if I haven't experienced him already? And that right there, that third thing, why should I turn to a God I haven't experienced already, says it. They should have experienced God with that evangelism before they even had that question come in their mind. That question came up in their mind because you brought a false gospel to them. And I think that was what, as Christians became culturally enthused, I don't even know how to say it, but Christians have become culturally okay with the fact that God is authoritarian and he's aggressive and he should be feared, but he loves to drink beer and party. I see a lot of country gospel. And when I say country gospel, it's like the 3 G's: gold, God, and it's basically land. But like, forgot it. It's the 3 G's. But with all that being said, we put God in a predicament in the world, not just the United States, that God is only this way. God is only this way in my mind.
Yeah, but we make out of it.
Yeah. And what the Bible says is true, but this is the way I've experienced God, and I feel like it's okay. Like, I've definitely made some mistakes. I made mistakes yesterday, today.
Every day. Yeah.
Like I've made some big mistakes when it comes to man, some small mistakes, some things that may get pushed under the rug and never dealt with, which I hope not. God forbid, I rebuke that. Because all things need to be dealt with. All things. But if we be so comfortable in doing the things that we're okay with, from, not saying good things towards our family, not bringing up our mother and dad up in prayer requests just because we think they don't deserve it, or even the fact that you could say Eric's a parent. Are you a parent? No. Okay. And Eric goes to his child, potentially, and tells him to go to bed because he needs to go to bed. not because he has school tomorrow, because he said so.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I believe in God? Because he said so. Why would I not? Why would I pray for my parents because I hate them? I should pray for my parents because they're my parents, first of all, no matter what.
Exactly.
You know, they should be some of the closest people I'm ever been with.
And yeah, you touched something good right there. And how often, honestly, when we pray, do we pray for others in general? I feel like in my prayer life, when I look back, most of the time I just pray about what I want, and like acting very selfish sometimes.
Yeah.
Not really incorporating other people in need, who definitely need prayer, in my prayers. It's just all around about me. It centers about me, and yeah, that's something I definitely want to change in my prayer life.
Mm-hmm.
Like keeping an open eye and open ear for other people, and their needs, and like praying for them instead of only just for me.
Yeah, and you know, we'll be ending here soon, but the fact that God has given us the Holy Spirit, the authority to use the Holy Spirit when we command, and yet we don't. There's something happened at church the other day, and I went to the altar. When I speak with some people, maybe go back to your family next year to listen to this. But when I say altar, it's not like a one place of worship, but it's more though a sacrifice of saying. It's more of a symbolism. It's not like a place where I go up there and only I can go up there and worship in that specific time. No, it's just me being vulnerable to God and saying, it's a representation basically towards others, saying that I need help. Come help me. But it's not the fact that only God can touch me up there. God can touch you anywhere. Your friends can pray for you anywhere. But I went to the altar and I was standing, and I'm part of the prayer ministry team now. I became over in August, and I was just praying for these two individuals. I'm not gonna talk about their lives and stuff. 'Cause it's not my job to do or whatever. But then the pastor and one of the prophets came up. When I say prophets, he has a very strong gift of prophecy. And when I say that, it's not that he says something every Sunday, but like God uses him to touch other people's lives. To bring that good intent, that good word
Mm-hmm.
to their life. And with all that being said, Eric, he called out something about my finances. I talked about my finances, being blessed multitude, and and that's one of the biggest things that I stress right now. Like, hopefully my parents ain't listening, but financial burden's always been a big thing in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always caused me to stress out. Like there was moments where I was on a trip with my mom for a doctor's appointment a couple hours away, and we had no money, so we had to eat ice. Like I'll never forget that moment. Like we had got ice from Chick-fil-A because we had no money, and we ate it. And I'm like, and I was living comfortably too.
Yeah.
Like I was living so comfortably that the necessities weren't even priority no more. And it did dawn on me. I was like, I would never want to live like this. There's no reason for me to be stressed about the basics. There's a need for me to stress out if I'm not doing enough for God, like in a disciplined way. And Eric, it pushed me to a limit, as in a child's mind, saying, "Is this okay? Is this right? Where's God at in the midst of this?" And I never once complained. We joke about it to this day, me and my sister and mom, because it was just us three. And my stepdad at the time didn't know about it, which was the former stepdad. That guy in there named Rex, he's my second stepdad. My mom got remarried in 2022 of December. And it, he touched on something. I'm like, God, you know what I need. You just said it. The guy didn't know nothing about my life when it come to that. Like there was in the back of my head, like there was a push. There's a push for a need.
Yeah.
And obviously I want to live comfortably so I can serve. But also I want to live comfortably because I'm human. I don't want to worry about like you see all this stuff in here. Yeah, I'm blessed. But you can still be broke.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritually, physically, financially, mentally.
Yeah.
You can still be broke and still be on top of the mountain. Do you deserve to be on top of the mountain if you're broke though?
Good question.
Yeah. So, with all that being said, God does know our needs. He's still functioning today in our lives. If they do or that not know it, they do or may not know it rather. Obviously Eric has touched on that a lot in his individual life and how he's navigated through it. And Eric, before we close, could you just tell us on like how God has moved through your life since you've been at UNCP and like some things you may or may have not learned and how you've applied it? Again.
I definitely learned a lot. What he kind of has taught me lately is kind of to be a shepherd for the sheep, for those who need to hear his gospel for the first time. There's a lot of people on campus that are searching for something, and yeah, I feel like just by being there with them and like experiencing life with them, and yeah, just telling them about what I experienced with God. Yeah, I feel like that is for me right now the place to be because there's a lot of broken people that just need to hear the gospel of hope and love and just need Jesus in their lives. And God has definitely sent me the right people along the way to be there for them, to guide them, to shepherd them, and to show them the way. And I also got the chance to be involved in a local ministry at
Mm-hmm.
Vertical Church. They have a Bible study group on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. It's like a college ministry that I'm a part of, and it's definitely been a blessing. And yeah, I feel like God has taught me a lot to be humble and patient and obedient in the last few months since I got here. It's an ongoing
And
process. Yeah.
when you say obedient, like obviously that's a big um thing. But what do you mean by obedient for someone who may have gotten this far in the podcast? And how is a German guy like Eric being obedient to God? Like when you say obedient, like culturally that can mean so many different things. Like you can be I can be obedient physically to myself and my experiences and something I'm dealing with. You can be obedient mentally, spiritually, or something you do daily. I don't know. Just could you touch on that for a second?
I just say like being obedient to me personally means living according to God's scripture, like how
Mm-hmm.
He intended life to be with Him, and but also being gracious to yourself because we're gonna fail, we're gonna make mistakes, we're gonna sin every now and then. It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, Jesus died for all of that.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, um, yeah, because I've definitely been way too hard on myself trying to make everything perfect and trying to like live a morally perfect life, and that's simply not possible. Yeah, I'd say like being gracious to yourself and not too hard on yourself, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Okay. And with all that being said, talked about obedience and and that consistency of obedience. How does like being in America push your faith to be different when you go back home?
I definitely started to incorporate him into my daily life more and more. Something I haven't been doing a lot back home. I know the power of prayer, to do it daily, to read scripture daily, um, to be intentional and things like that. Yeah, the pastor at the church here, he's been stepping on my toes a lot lately, and
Mhm.
kind of exposing my weaknesses also. And yeah, I feel like I learned a lot that I can also apply in my spiritual life back home. Especially when it comes to sharing the gospel, because as I said, there's a big need in Germany right now, and people are searching for the truth, and they try to fill it with all kinds of stuff, but yeah, they just seem to be running around in circles, and yeah, it's hard for me to put into words what exactly I learned, but I feel like most of it I'm gonna experience once I'm back,
Yeah,
because I know definitely something
yeah,
has
it's gonna be
changed.
definitely different.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah, even if I can't see it now yet, then I don't really know what it is. I know when I go back home,
Hmm.
people are gonna see it in me, because yeah, God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, and being, when people hear that you're 28, but yet you're a senior and undergrad here at UNCP, and life is totally different all around the world. In your 28 years of living, what is like some of the best advice you can give to a new Christian? Besides the basics, what is something like you can like that's out of this world, like nearly, I don't know, that you can give to someone who's new to the faith, and then we'll end it.
I definitely say, like, surrounding yourself with good Christian friends.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was new in my faith, I still kept a lot of my old friends, which can be a good thing, and God can use you to lead them to Christ. But on the other hand, they were kind of like bringing me down with their attitude and their behavior, and I was kind of falling back into old patterns
Yeah.
that I thought were part of my old life. But yeah, having like spiritual mentors, spiritual role models that can be in your church or friends that you have, um, and just reading the Bible daily. I'm having a reading plan. I also have the YouVersion Bible app that helps me a
Mm-hmm.
lot. They have good reading plans, and there's always a verse of the day that I read.
Is it that one? The
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. It's the holy, yeah, from you version. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is actually my longest episode by far, by like 30 minutes, I believe, which is good. It's really good because, I had some people, podcasts are usually, the short podcasts, and, you learn a lot in a little bit. And then, you get these life stories and how they, with the host, and, obviously they get to know me more because, I got those solo episodes, but like hearing someone that's from across the world, um, with the 40 been visited 42 countries, and I keep saying that because that amazes me. Um, you've basically visited like nearly 25% of the countries that you can visit of the world.
There's still a lot more to explore.
Yeah, yeah, and some people are so limited to their own selves that think they can't. But it's time for another thing, and I do encourage everyone to continue to explore and develop those relationships externally, like I have with Erik. And randomly met him. I don't even know how we met. You know how we met?
Just randomly, like in the
Yeah,
hallway.
yeah. And I don't even know how we got to this point, but like, obviously it was over faith. The Christian faith, and God definitely used that to bring you here. I do believe. You definitely helped me out with a lot, man, and definitely helped me understand some more things about myself, and and I hope I have to you too
Yeah.
in some form, some way. But if anyone wants to follow you on Instagram, where could they do that? Like, or find you on social media? Like if they wanted to text you or something, could they follow you on Instagram or text you on WhatsApp or something like that? Would you want to share that information? Or
Yeah, like I use WhatsApp a lot and Instagram. I'm comfortable sharing my information if anyone wants to reach out. And
yeah, you could actually if you want to, you just share it right now.
yeah, so my name on Instagram is Erik with a K, Falcon, Falken 97.
Mhm.
And yeah, my WhatsApp name. I actually have a German name, a German number. Plus 49 157 4521340.
Gotcha. And I'll be sure to include that in the bio. And I
Yeah,
believe I'm gonna post this on YouTube also as an audio clip. That way, if YouTube is accessible everywhere. You know.
yeah.
Um.
I encourage people to reach out because I feel like I've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to talk
Yeah.
about, and like,
Yeah. And man, if
yeah,
if you felt led to, man, we'll definitely have you on for a second episode before you go back home. Down the road if you want to, and we'll dig deeper. We definitely got time. So it may be late like this. It's technically. I'm not gonna say it. It's You see that?
yep.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm good. But
I'm good too. I don't have classes tomorrow until
hey,
like
me too.
1:25.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, all that being said, man, and I really appreciate you coming out, and I hope someone has learned and been able to apply who they are as individuals to the scriptures, and also piggyback off your life, and you lead by example. You have led me by example here tonight. Hope we're both been able to touch someone, and specifically you though, having someone very, very, very different history and background, but yet united by faith in Jesus
Yeah.
Christ is amazing. What are the chances? What are the chances of believing over nearly 9 billion individuals in the world, and yet Erik from Germany, who mom's from Ohio, end up in little old Pembroke in Asa Locklear's office.
Yeah. What are the odds?
So it definitely a crazy moment to experience, and I'll process it tomorrow and be like, had this guy from Germany, it hasn't hit me yet, but it just amazes me, man. And I do want to say I appreciate you, and for everyone listening, Erik's information is out there. Be sure to contact him if you guys got any more questions, and we may be able to have him on for another episode if he's willing to come back on and share some more.
If you'll have me again.
Yeah, man, most definitely. And if you got any more international friends, soon, maybe not at the end of this semester, but we'll be able to have those 3 mics. That's one of my next goals, and get that professional audio recording set up. But pretty good right now. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Overall. But if anyone wants to, reach out, hop on the podcast, the Roundabout is here. With that being said, the iconic outro. That'll be peace out on the Roundabout.